Hello, I'm Ashley Hefner, Advanced Planning Manager for the City of Culver City. Culver City is in the process of updating its general plan, which will help guide how our city government makes decisions and serves residents over the next 25 years. The general plan covers topics we all care deeply about, including housing, the economy, climate adaptation and resiliency, health and equity, transportation, arts and culture, parks and recreation, urban design, and so much more. I'm pleased to introduce a new video series where our team of expert consultants will share key findings from their research on existing conditions in Culver City. The city will use their insights and feedback from the community to shape policies in the updated general plan. A mini survey accompanies each video for you to share your thoughts on the content presented in the videos. We need to hear from you to create a general plan for Culver City that's driven by our community values. So please share the videos and surveys with others. This is a challenging time, and we thank you for your continued interest in the general plan update. Community engagement related to the general plan update will continue. For the time being, it will transition to an online format through methods such as these informational videos and surveys to gather input. Thank you, and please enjoy the video.
Hello, and welcome to this presentation on hazards, disasters, and emergencies that could occur in Culver City. My name is Rima Chakra, and I'm an urban planner with the consulting firm Environmental Science Associates. I am part of the larger consulting team hired by the city to help with their update to the general plan. Today, I will describe the different types of hazards present in Culver City, what the city is doing to minimize risk to life and property, and what you can do to minimize your risk. The major hazards in Culver City include landslides, earthquakes, flooding, wildfires, hazardous materials, and climate change. I'll be touching on climate change, but stay tuned for a much more detailed video on climate change that describes rising temperatures, increased number of extreme heat days, more extreme rain events, extended droughts, and increased wildfires. The city is aware of these hazards and has been working to reduce the community's risk to these hazards with a number of initiatives. The city is increasing its emergency preparedness, educating and working with the community to prepare for disasters and emergencies. The city is identifying buildings most at risk to earthquakes called soft story buildings that are present in Culver City. The city is also updating codes and city requirements for new buildings, exploring options for enhancing public health, safety, and welfare related to the Inglewood oil field, preparing several plans to address hazards and implementing strategies identified in those plans. The city's fire department has a brush clearance program, and the city participates in the state's reporting system to track and monitor hazardous materials. So let's begin with the types of major hazards present in Culver City. Landslides involve the movement of rock and soil downslope. The rate of rock and soil movement can vary from a slow creep over many years to a sudden mass movement. Landslides can also be triggered by earthquakes, which can cause slope failure. Areas at risk to landslides are usually associated with steep slopes. The geology, structure, and amount of groundwater influence the risk for landslides. External factors like climate, topography, slope geometry, and human activity also play a role. Landslide risk in Culver City is present in Blair Hills and Culver Crest, shown on the map in brown. Under certain conditions, there is potential for significant damage to the Blair Hills neighborhood if an earthquake were to occur. Culver City, like most cities in Southern California, is at risk from an earthquake. In California, there are two sections of the Earth's surface called tectonic plates that are sliding slowly past each other, the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. The boundary between the two plates is called the San Andreas Fault. The stress of this movement has created thousands of additional faults. Most of California sits on the North American Plate, but Culver City, along with other cities near or along the coast, sit on the Pacific Plate. Seismic activity or earthquakes occur when the stress between faults is released, resulting in ground shaking. Often there are foreshocks and aftershocks with major earthquakes that can also cause damage. Earthquakes can trigger surface ruptures along fault lines. The Alcas-Priolo fault line passes through Culver City. Surface rupture or ground movement at the surface can cause significant damage to buildings, roads, and utilities crossing the fault. Not all earthquake faults have been mapped. The Northridge earthquake of 1994 occurred along an unknown fault line. The Northridge earthquake caused more property damage than any other earthquake in the United States, and was the 9th most damaging earthquake in history. Earthquakes are hard to predict, and our current warning system only provides us with seconds to prepare. But I'll return to this in a moment to talk about what you can do to reduce your risk. Earthquakes can trigger liquefaction. Liquefaction occurs when the force of an earthquake's shaking causes groundwater to mix with the soil. This mixture temporarily becomes fluid. This may in turn cause buildings and other structures to tilt, collapse, or pop out of the ground, or to otherwise suffer damage. Most of Culver City is at risk for liquefaction during an earthquake. Some buildings are more at risk from damage during an earthquake than others. Buildings that were constructed prior to the 1980s may be more at risk. The vast majority of buildings built in Culver City were built prior to the 80s. Buildings with weak foundations and ground reinforcements or lacking deep foundation pylons may face increased risk from earthquakes, which trigger liquefaction and landslides. Soft story buildings, as pictured here on the bottom left, have a large open space on the ground floor. These are at higher risk to being damaged from ground shaking or surface rupture during an earthquake. Masonry or brick buildings that have not been reinforced with steel are also at risk from surface rupture or ground shaking. The flood risk potential is limited in Culver City because Bionda Creek has been placed within a concrete lined channel that effectively limits flooding during extreme rain events. There is an area at the north end of Culver City, shown here in blue, that could see flooding during a very big storm. With climate change, we will see more extreme rainfall events. These could lead to increased urban flooding if the city's stormwater system is overloaded. There are areas inside and near Culver City that are at risk of a wildfire. These include Blair Hills, Inglewood Oil Field, and Culver Crest. Wildfires can be caused by human error, intentionally by arson, by mechanical sources of ignition such as heater or generator, and much more rarely by natural events such as lightning strikes. Wildfires often occur in forests or other areas with ample vegetation and are a natural part of the cycle of regeneration. However, Southern California faces challenges with wildfire hazards because more and more homes are being built and encroaching into wildland areas. This mix of structures and wildland vegetation has increased the risk of fires. In addition, extreme drought and fire suppression has built up the amount of vegetation fuels that smaller fires would have typically kept under control. Climate change is expected to further increase the severity and frequency of fires. Properties that store or use hazardous materials are closely tracked by state agencies. Properties that have leaked hazardous materials into the soil or groundwater are required to remediate and clean up the site. Currently, Culver City has about 16 of those properties undergoing cleanup. The Inglewood oil field is one of the largest urban oil fields in the US. It has over 1,550 oil and gas wells. California has the most stringent regulation and oversight of oil and gas operations in the country. There have been 2 reported releases in Culver City associated with the Inglewood oil field within the last 5 years. One in 2013 associated with the pipeline which leaked produced water, and another in 2019 which leaked oil water mix in the field near the Boneyard Dog Park. In both instances, the leak did not reach Bionda Creek. Now that you've heard about all the major hazards present here in Culver City, we can talk about ways to reduce that risk. There are approaches to reducing risk. For example, the city could require or encourage buildings at increased risk from earthquakes to retrofit to reduce damage during an earthquake. The city could also prevent new development from locating in areas at risk of floods, surface rupture, landslides, or wildfires. Another approach would be to continue to allow development to locate in those areas, but to make sure those new structures are built to safer standards. Another example would be to increase awareness of these risks and help everyone in the city prepare for emergencies. It's not only up to the city to help reduce possible harm to life and property due to these hazards. You can play a big role in reducing your risk as well. You can create a plan and prepare a disaster supply kit. The city hosts an annual community-wide disaster drill that you can participate in. You can also register your phone number with the city's emergency notification system to get timely alerts. You can determine if you live in one of those hazard areas, like landslides, surface rupture, wildfires, or flood zones. Although all of Culver City is at risk from an earthquake, you can determine if your home or place of work is at increased risk based on the type or age of the building. There are ways to retrofit your home. Resources are available at the link shown here on the screen. Thank you for joining me today. Now that you've heard about the various hazards present in Culver City, please take a quick 5-minute survey on the project website to share your ideas. What do you think the city should do to reduce your risk to hazards and disasters? Finally, if you have any other ideas or comments, please feel free to contact city planning staff. And be sure to check out pictureculvercity.com for project updates and opportunities to get involved in the general plan update. Thanks.
Thank you for watching the City of Culver City's General Plan Update video series. For more information about the General Plan Update and opportunities to get involved, visit pictureculvercity.com. Thank you, and stay safe.